Today in the battle arena, we've got ourselves a good old-fashioned monster fight. The MUTO, the flying monster, is able to take on Godzilla versus the Warbat, the flying monster, is able to take on King Kong. So, who's going to come out on top here? Well, let's get into it. But before we get into it, we'll make sure you go subscribe. Only about 20% of y'all are subscribed, so make sure you go change that. Hit the subscribe button. You're going to see amazing videos like this one every single day. And if you already are subscribed, well, that's amazing. You are the absolute best. Now let's get into it. So the male MUTO kind of gets overlooked in the Monsterverse. Partly because the MUTOs just get overlooked simply because they were in the first movie and fought the weakest version of Godzilla. But the male MUTO gets even more overlooked on top of that, just because it's smaller, not as cool or intimidating as its partner. But it's still definitely a threat. I mean, the MUTO was able to dig out a huge hole literally right after birth, and to destroy a nuclear facility an hour later. It picked up a nuclear sub and carried it off to Hawaii, so like 50 miles away. Then on top of that, carried it up into the jungle. It ate like half a monorail, just gobbled it up. It was a lot. Then it was able to fight against Godzilla. Yeah, this big guy. And he did surprisingly well. Like, surprisingly well. Of course, it does help that the MUTOs have been perfectly adapted and evolved to fight against Godzillas. They're basically the paper to his rock. But that definitely showed here. The MUTO is able to drag Godzilla around, stab and pierce him with his claws, do his best WWE impression, do a nice body slam. The MUTO got some good hits in. Was also able to dodge some attacks, actually do this repeatedly, and even take some big attacks as well. Of course, all that ended up not being enough, because in the end, Godzilla got his, but the MUTO put up a nice fight on his way out. But then we also definitely can't be overlooking the Warbat. I mean, yeah, I should probably talk about it. They live down in the subterranean rainforest, down in the hollow earth. And dude, are they super, super aggressive. I mean, that's kind of how they got their name, because they try and fight and kill anything that they see. Any little thing flying around, they're going to try and bring it out of the air. And I mean, we actually saw this play out in action. They destroyed one of those little flying machines that the Monarch crew was flying around in, then they set their sights on Kong. And even though Kong, instantly killed one of them, it turns out that bashing them on the head with a giant rock will do that, the other one put up a real good fight. It very nearly killed Kong. Like, it got up in there with its giant bat wings and just smothered the big guy. And for as strong as King Kong is, and trust me, the big guy is real strong, he couldn't break out. He couldn't break through the Warbat's wings. He couldn't get out, and it took a whole barrage of missiles to break its hold. And then, well, Kong did what Kong does best. So those are our two guys. Those are our two monsters. Who's coming out on top here? Well, there are a couple things here in Warbat's favor. He's roughly just as big as the MUTO, clocking in at a little over 25,000 tons. He's real flexible. He's able to just wrap and contort his body like a big old snake. And even though we never saw it actually happen during its little fight with Kong, Warbats can spray out venom from these glands inside their wings. So, who's coming out on top here? Well, both these monsters are really similar. They're both flying around, they're both able to land some great hits. But I think the difference between the two is just who they were going up against. The MUTO was fighting against a weaker version of Godzilla. And even then, it was never really able to gain the upper hand by itself. It had to become a 2-on-1 fight for the MUTOs to ever get the leg up. But with the Warbat, well, it was able to overpower Kong all by itself. The same Kong that was able to square up and fight on par with an even more powerful version of Godzilla. A Godzilla who had gained more power and already been all nuked up. So yeah, I think this would be crazy close. The MUTO could get his, but the Warbat just managed to impress me more, even in its super short time on the screen. The Warbat wins.